Welcome to Discovering. If you've been watching the show, you've seen the progress of the 100-year-old canoe restoration. Tonight we'll take a look at one of the most interesting stages of the project, canvassing the canoe.
The canvas process is only a slight improvement over what was originally birch bark.
Then it's a visit to Northwoods Wilderness Outfitters to learn a bit about kayaks designed for fishing. And you've seen the sign at many a campground. We'll find out what a host camper does. That's all tonight, so put the remote down, your feet up, and relax. It's time for Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone, forests thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak, surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields, call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill, the eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
It's been rebuilt, patched, varnished, sanded, and sanded some more. Tonight we'll see a major transformation in the 100-year-old canoe. We'll see it go from this to this. The canoe has made the journey from Marquette to Boulder Junction, Wisconsin, into the shop and masterful hands of Dave Osborne, owner of Little Lakes Canoe Restoration. It's time to canvas the canoe.
This is the come-along apparatus that I've come up with to help stretch the canvas. There's a couple different ways to do it, but this happens to be the way that I've been successful in stretching canvas. The other way would be to have the canoe right side up and stretch it a different way, but this works for me, so that's what I've gone with. It's tied off on the other end of the workshop with another eye bolt in the wall there and an eye bolt here. Made a sandwich out of 2x4s and clamped the canvas together and just pull it with the come along, and typically I get about 1 inch per foot of stretch. So on a 16-foot canoe, I might stretch that canvas 16 inches, which seems like quite a bit.
Right.
And once you start stretching the canvas, you really start seeing the shape of the canoe again, and it's another step closer to the finished thing, and it's one of the most exciting parts because it really starts looking like a canoe again.
When Dave talks about the shape of the canoe, one thing about these canoes is a real drastic taper in. It's called tumble home. And if you look at this canoe here, this one has less of the tumble home than what the B.N. Morris has. And I think that one of the things that makes a B.N. Morris a real elegant looking canoe is this tumble home, the way it is on the boat.
This is an upholsterer's tool, and I use that to grip the canvas and stretch it tight across this way, across the hull. A couple of stainless steel staples, about every 4 inches. Use a 1/2 inch stainless steel staple because it's a wet environment. You don't want your staples to rust, your canvas will fall off. The traditional method would have been to use brass tacks. That's what they would have used in the factory. This is easier, quicker, especially for one person.
You just want the teeth on that tool to grab the canvas.
Yeah, sometimes they go all the way through, but you don't have to. It's just something for you to grip.
One of the things that Kathy talked about on the last video was how often people get a boat like this and they'll come to somebody like Dave, and the exact same thing that's happening here now is he's showing me how to do this. And that's one of the neat things about this whole process is having people like Dave that are willing to show people how to do this.
You want to start working back the other way, Craig?
Back. Back this way? Okay.
The canvas process is only a slight improvement over what was originally birch bark. Actually, there were Native Americans, once canvas became available and birch bark became scarce, Native Americans were using canvas on a traditional birch bark type of build with the same methods, only using the canvas as a skin. It's basically artist canvas, number 10, a double-filled artist canvas. I buy it from our art supply house. Native Americans, once nails and screws became available, they use those in their birch barks as well. So this is only a slight improvement over the Native American build. And that's pretty much it for stretching it lengthwise, stretching it widthwise. Now it's a matter of putting the seam on the ends. As I put some cheater tacks in, or staples, to hold the stretch, because we have to release it from the apparatus. Well, we got to make a cut right down the keel line. Start at about where is tight still to the hull, to the stem here, and make a cut. And I apply a sealer underneath for two different reasons. One, it seals up the joint, and the other thing is that it's waterproof, and it's a sort of a adhesive as well. We'll go halfway on both ends, and then we'll turn it over, because it's a lot easier to work upright than it is to be stapling while standing on your head.
Okay.
Back in 1999, I acquired a canoe. Actually, it was in the mid-90s. Acquired a canoe from my sister-in-law, had it in her barn. I thought it was pretty cool, and I'd seen a group from the Wooden Canoe Heritage Association and what they could do with old canoes, so I thought I could do that. And, well, I couldn't. I picked away at it and kind of floundered, and then I finally found a course at North House Folk School in Grand Marais, Minnesota, and took a week-long canoe restoration course, fixed that canoe up, and I looked for one right away as soon as that one was done. That was 1999. Did it as a hobby until 2007, and I've been doing it full-time since then. So, love for things from days gone by, and love for the outdoors and paddling and the kind of quiet places you can get with canoes. That's all appealing to me. So it kind of worked out. You want to really scrub it, get it to soak in. The goal is to get it to soak in and absorb or encapsulate as much of the cotton fibers as possible. There's a little bit of a sizing on the canvas, which is an aid for the canvas production, but it does create a little bit of water repellency. So you got to kind of scrub to get this stuff to soak in. Yeah, this is what creates the waterproof barrier. You do 3 coats of the filler, which in this case happens to be red, and then 3 coats of a primer, and then the color of the canoe goes on after that. And generally it's 4 to 6 coats of color. So there's a lot of coating on top of the canvas.
Sea red, Kirby Sea Red is what the final color is going to be, this. And I would like to try to put a stripe on it, a cream color stripe or something like that. Well, there's the 6 coats of this, and then you get that done, and then you start putting on the probably 5 or 6 coats of paint. And then after that is putting the cap rails on. The seat is ready to put in now, but the cap rails are going to be the biggest project, getting those shaped. I'm lucky because I have another B.N. Morris in the garage that belongs to a friend of ours, and it has cap rails on it, so I can look at how those are constructed. Because the ones that were on it were so badly damaged in the ends that, you know, they're a real poor example of what they should look like.
When we think about fishing, we usually picture ourselves sitting in a boat, maybe even a canoe. In recent years, sport fishing from kayaks has become very popular. They're easy to transport, easy to launch, easy to manage on the water, and offer a stealthy means of sneaking up on easily spooked fish. While just about any kayak will do, you'll find a variety of boats designed specifically for the sport of fishing.
This is what you call a sit-on-top, which is, to me, the safest kayak there is. The drawback on them is they're probably the heavier of the kayaks that you want to drag around. But as far as they use these on the oceans, they started out with this model, in fact, was designed by scuba divers. They put their tanks in the back and went out, and they're fairly easy to crawl in and out of. They can take a wave, and actually they have sculper holes, which the water can go right out. So it's like a floating dock out there. They're what you see on the ocean. It's the #1 deal going. I love them. You can sit side saddle, feet dangling off the side. They're really a nice unit, no doubt about it. So what I do is try to keep as much quiet up front, kind of keep it as clean as I want, because you don't want your fly line getting wrapped around too much. Usually if I'm trolling, I'll use this setup right here. Otherwise I'll take it off and clear my front deck and just go without the rod holders to be a little easier on everything. Should have a paddle leash. They really come in handy. Most paddles all float nowadays, but it's so much easier if you do toss it off the side and you don't have to retrieve it too hard. But then they also have anchoring systems, which are really the only way to anchor up is with the trolley system, is one of the safest ways. You can use a pole. A lot of guys will take a stick if you're in shallow water, about a 6-foot stick, and you could put it down into the muck, and it'll hold you pretty good. But the way of doing this is pretty much, we use, there's different anchors systems, but I usually just use a down weight. Throw that over, and then what you do is you double up your line, come through the hole. That way you can anchor off the back of the kayak. You just pull your rope, and then you just tie off right here on a clip that I got. So that keeps you anchored to the rear. You can anchor off the front of the boat. You never really want to anchor off the side of a kayak because of the fact that if you took a wave, it could capsize you. Not so much in this kayak, but in a regular kayak. It's not safe to do. This way, if you're on a river or a flowage and you get pinned up someplace in fast water, all you do is untie your anchor. What I do is have a float on the other end. What you do is you just throw your float over, and what that'll do is just take your line right out, and you'll be, if I get this right, you'll be out of trouble, and you can paddle around and pick up your anchor at a different angle that way. So it's one of the safest rigs out there as far as anchoring up. And what I do is a lot of times, especially with the ball anchor, is if you're like bluegill fishing in shallow water or whatever, I usually give it a lot of rope. This is a pretty big size kayak, so a lot of times in a real windy day it'll drag it a little bit anyways. But if I want to move down a shoreline, I just pull her in 6-8 feet and then just drift down the shoreline, so you never really have to pick your anchor up out of the water, which makes it pretty easy that way. Saves you a lot of time monkeying and picking up and moving. Of course, they got some really nice seats in these kayaks. These are actually sit up above. This model is actually made to stand in, A lot of guys do stand up in them. It's a little wider model. You can put downriggers on these, which will really stabilize it out. I do that once in a while. If you're going to have any type of kayak, make sure you have a life vest that's made for a kayak. Because the biggest thing is, once you're in a seat, and if you got the full-bodied ones like the other style, you got a hump back, and it kills you. Being a muskie and pike fisherman, you need something to grab some of those toothy critters, and I'm not going to haul around a big net. So the grabbers are one of the best things. There are some that have a scale integrated on there. It's a lot easier on the hands. Put a float on in case it goes overboard. You can always retrieve it. Then of course you need your jaw spreaders, big and a good pair of pliers or tongs to get the hooks out. They make all different kinds of bags. This is a cooler bag actually. You can put lunch in there or whatever. You tend to carry a lot of my different fly boxes and whatnot in there. And you always got a little bit of extra room for your suntan oils and whatnot. Bug spray, got to have that. And it does carry quite a few rods, so it's a handy outfit. Guys make up their crates too that work fine. If you're out in bigger water, you might want to think about buying a rudder. It is a more expensive aftermarket piece that you can get, which are controlled by your foot levers then. But it keeps you in a straight line in a real windy situation. But most lakes you can get by without it up here pretty well. And these work just as well in streams or lakes. They get through everything, so pretty nice little unit there.
There are hundreds of campgrounds here in the UP, and most of us have spent many a summer night sitting around a fire next to our home away from home. And as Upers, we typically come prepared for just about anything. Our campers are equipped with bug dope, duct tape, various tools, and a junk drawer filled with nails, string, bolts, nuts, every screw imaginable, and a couple of 22 shells buried at the bottom. But if you're not from the UP, or your wife left the vice grips at home again, all is not lost. In many cases, there is someone there to help. I talked with a couple while camping at Indian Lake to find out more about the role of a campground host.
Well, our main purpose as a campground host is to greet the visitors and the campers that come into the park, and also to be available for them because they'll come to us for any needs that they want, directions to sightseeing spots, spots they can kayak, good fishing spots, and also if they have any problems. We have been available to take and make phone calls to local garages if they have a breakdown in their vehicles. We pumped up a lot of tires, and I've got a power pack for starting vehicles, which we just did this morning. And but just be around for any needs that they have. We're really not obligated to do it, but we also loan out our own personal tools if they need a screwdriver or a wrench. And we've even been asked if we had a wine bottle opener. So it's interesting. Duct tape and zip ties, So it's, but it's a very rewarding, as a campground host. Just meeting everybody and talking to the visitors that come in. So we've been a campground host now for 4 years, and we've always hosted here. Last September we did host at J.W. Wells in Cedar River, but as a volunteer host, it's very, very rewarding.
We set up programs for the month of July and August while we're here in the campground. A lot of those programs have evolved from people that we've known. For example, Ed and Jan Wright. We've known them in other situations, and they have an apiary, and they talk about how they produce honey and what happens along that way. UP Raptors have been here, and Randy Brungens brings that program over, and we've had ice cream socials. Thanks to Terry Giroux and her group at Palms Books Park gift shop. And we just try to find things that are important to campers or that might be of interest to campers.
You can go on the Michigan DNR website and get into the state parks website, and you can look up being a campground host, and you'll have you can print out the policy as a campground host. Now, plus you can get a copy of the application. If you are interested in a certain state park or state parks, you send an application, you fill out the application, send it to that specific state park. They will do a background check on you, and then if you are accepted, if they have openings and you are accepted at one of them, they will ask or request that you attend a campground host training, which is held at the Ram Center at Higgins Lake, and that's usually the end of April or 1st of May. So it's really not hard. You just have to find a state park that does have openings, and there are a shortage of campground hosts. So it's not a a big, long, drawn-out process. Your state park that you may be accepted at, you may have to go and be interviewed by the state park manager at that state park.
You meet people from all over the world. Last summer we had people from Holland. We had people from
Germany.
For Germany, yeah, and people that come to us for help are so appreciative of the little things that we can do to help them out. Maybe just a phone call or having something that they need to borrow from us, and that makes it worthwhile.
Meeting the people and being here to help them. That's probably the most rewarding of our position as a campground host.
Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week right here on Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.